One of the phrases you don't want to hear in a relationship is, it's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's me. If you've ever heard that phrase said to you, who's heard that phrase? Who's been told, it's not you, it's me? Come on, put your hands up. Put your hands up. Well, they lied. They lied to you. It was you. It was you. They broke up with you, and it was because of you. It's just the reasons they broke up with you were so bad, they didn't want to tell you. That's how bad it was. It's not you, it's me. Horrible. Nearly choked on the word horrible there. Horrible words to hear. The only relationship where you want to hear the words, it's not you, it's me, is in your relationship with Jesus Christ. The only relationship where those words are the truth is in your relationship with Jesus Christ. Because everything good in that relationship, it's not you, it's Him. The one who initiated that relationship, it's not you, it's Him. The one who sustains that relationship, it's not you, it's Him. The one who brought salvation, it's not you, it's Him. And here, the next couple is where we can get a little bit unstuck. This is where we can sometimes get confused. The one who sustains salvation, it's not you, it's Him. The one who secures your salvation after received, it's not you, it's Him. See, this really is a kind of lopsided relationship that we've got going. We really are, as the saying goes, punching above our weight level. Now, anyone here in an earthly relationship punching above their weight level? Man, some of you were in trouble for not putting your hand up just then. I'm definitely punching above my weight level. I love my wife. She's a beautiful creature, and she's awesome. I so don't deserve her. I'm punching above my weight level. You know, on Valentine's Day, she did this awesome trick on me. She said, I've got you a present, even though we had a no presents alliance. We'll just go out. And I've got a picture here. No, next one, sorry. I opened that one on the right, the picture frame, and I'm like, yeah, great. It's a non-interactive copy of your Facebook page. But it was a trick, and then she gave me another box, and she gave me a PlayStation 4. Isn't that awesome? Man, so good. And I had stuck to the rule. I'd got her nothing. I'm a man of my word. For my 30th birthday, go back to the other picture, she got me 30 presents. 30 numbered and like all wrapped neatly. There was some really good. I'll be honest, 25 of them were good and 5 were a bit like, yeah. But 25 out of 30, great effort. Man, you know, she's always honoring in her speech. She's so good. She's always, to the point where like she makes me look like a psycho in front of people. So she'll come up, she'll be like, babe, can I go get a drink of water? I'll be like, yes, go. And then I'll always tell her like, don't ask me if you can get a drink of water because you make me look like a psycho. This new Colombian guy in our church, he came up to me, he was like, I really like the way that you have your wife. And I was like, oh yeah. He goes, she won't do anything without asking you. And I thought, yeah, I'll just rep it. I was like, that's right. She don't even drink water without my say-so. Now that's her. Now me, you know, when we met, I was broke. My Commodore had broken down. Probably better. That would have been worse. And so my assistant connect group leader back at Perth CLC, the church that planted this church and sent me out, I used to like drive around in his passenger side, like I'm all hollering out orders as the connect group leader, in like the passenger side being driven around by my assistant connect group leader. So who knows that song Scrubs by TLC? I was the scrub. The song goes, no, I don't want no scrub. A scrub is a guy that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. And you know what, we're going to sing that right now together, all right? All right, ready? Everyone, I'm serious. From the top. And no, I don't want no scrub. Scrub is a guy that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. I was that scrub, okay? Now, see what I did there? I held up my wife, and then I held up myself, and seeing myself in my correct light, and then seeing God in his correct light, led me to the correct conclusion. Man, I'm blessed. It led me to realize, wow, look at what I've got. It really led me, looking at things in their correct light, seeing things in their correct light, really let me know where I stand. It really let me know who I am, who she was, what I've got. Sorry for the noise I made after the sip of water. You know, we need to do the same with God constantly. Jesus died for us. He saved us. He exchanged everything wrong with us for everything right with him. He drank the cup of all of our sin. Jesus paid the price we couldn't pay. He gave us the gift of salvation, not based on our performance, our behavior, or our actions, but a justification through faith alone. Salvation through belief alone. Faith in the work of the cross. Faith in what he did, nothing to do with what we have done or do. All we have to do is believe. There's nothing we can do to add. There's nothing we can do to subtract from the power of the cross. We just have to believe. He takes us as we are, and he continues, this is important, he continues to take us as we are, no matter what we do wrong. It's pretty good, isn't it? Life-changing, eye-opening, and we need to always see this relationship in its correct light. We need to always understand individually just what we've got, because when we start to incorrectly view ourselves in comparison with God, things are going to go wrong. And you know what? Here's the thing. We're pretty good. We'll never view God incorrectly. We're always good at holding him in his correct light. But it's ourselves that we start to hold in the wrong light. Because if we're lucky or if we're diligent, the mess in our lives can slowly start to sort itself out. You know, some things that we've been really trying to get on top of can start to get dealt with. And we can fall into this trap of thinking that this gap that we were once viewing is starting to narrow slightly. We can fall into this trap where we're like, I know God's got a standard, and I know I've fallen short, but I've only just fallen short. And the trap of comparison, where our eyes are on others we would deem worse than us, also leads us to see different levels. So, okay, God's standard's there. Now, if that guy's standard's there, man, I'm doing all right. I'm somewhere in the middle. You know, one of the worst insults you can tell someone is that they're really, really saved. I know I'm saved, but Matt, he's really saved. He is really, really saved. Man, can you believe how saved that girl is? Can you believe the level of salvation that's come upon that girl? Some of you aren't following me, but it's really funny, believe me. Maybe you've heard people boast about themselves too much. Maybe you've fallen into that trap. We can fall into that trap too of pushing our own credentials. Sometimes it happens. We want people to kind of know how great we are too. And I know this is for everyone because you all have a fallen nature. You all have a human nature. And your fallen nature, above all else, is self-righteous. Your human nature is self-righteous, and it longs to elevate itself. Can I put this to you? When you actually have the ability to boast about yourself, or when you have the ability to look down on someone else, it means you've actually started to incorrectly view yourself in light of God. When you hold yourself up in the light of God, the ability to elevate self or to put down others dissipates. It disappears. Sometimes, I know new believers, they can think like this, and I'm sure I've caused new believers to think like this. They think, either these guys are all liars, either they're all faking it, or I need to find some more messed up people to hang around, because I feel absolutely terrible with these people. Just relax, they're just as messed up, they've just got it hidden. We're all messed up. If you look at us in light of God, we're so fallen, we've so fallen short, and we can't just pay lip service to that revelation. If you're finding it hard to actually view yourself that way, you're not viewing things correctly. If we correctly hold ourselves up in the light of God, no longer would anyone be able to say that churches are full of judgment and condemnation. You know, when incorrect viewing takes place, let me tell you what follows. Judgment of others, condemnation of others, mean-spirited Christianity, and rhetoric. Let's look at some of this rhetoric. Exodus chapter 19, verses 78. Yep, there was going to be some Bible verses eventually. And now they're actually not going to stop. You're going to wish we're going to go back to the stand-up comedy routine. Exodus 19, verses 7 to 8. Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people, set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. This is the Torah, the law of Moses. So the people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. And what followed from that answer was 1,400 years of the law of Moses before Jesus came to prove, no, you can't. Man, one can only wonder what would have happened if they had humbled themselves and gave a different answer. John 13:37, Peter says this. Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Matthew 26:33, Peter replied, "Even if all of these," talking about the other disciples, "even if all of these fall away on account of you, I never will." Rhetoric. He didn't lay his life down. And one disciple actually stayed, John, with Jesus the whole time. He fell away. Rhetoric once again. Now, before we even look at that, I'm not trying to cut across, youthful passion. We don't want to play a game of semantics. That stuff's good. I've run a youth group, but there is a difference. There's a difference between passionate statements of faith, and rhetoric that comes from incorrect viewing. I have a friend, James Ayton, and he took over a youth group that was doing really badly, and stuff had gone on in the church, and the youth group had taken a hit, and the first thing he recognized he needed to do was to get rid of the save the world mantra that this youth group had on it. Save the world, and he brought in save the one. Save the one. Why don't you go out and save the one? Why don't you go out and save the one? Forget save the world. Now, don't get me wrong, this guy, James, wants to save the world. He just understands that if you go save one and you go save one, then, you've already saved one, then go save another one. This is how you save the world. He cut away the rhetoric. And then rhetoric can actually turn into mean-spiritedness. You know what saying I hate? And sorry if you've said it, and I think I used to say it. Hate the sin, love the sinner. I hate that saying. How about just love the sinner, since we've all got sin? Hate the sin. It's almost like an excuse to hate. Because since if we really felt the need to hate sin, the first place we would need to look is at ourselves. So when we say hate the sin, love the sinner, we should only really ever say that to ourselves. It's this sort of language, I think, that comes from incorrect viewing of ourselves in the light of God. I hated some of the stuff people said to me when we were moving into Northbridge. We moved into Northbridge, not to cradle, people's hair in the morning when they vomited on themselves, and, are you all right? Can I wash your face? I'm not above that. Just wasn't the goal, and, we just see ourselves as a Northbridge. We just wanted to be in the center of the city and just applicable to everyone. I do love dim sum, and perhaps a bunch of Asians pushed me towards it. But yeah, we went into Northbridge. But I used to hate when people would come up to me and say, oh, it's so awesome, you're in Northbridge. You're going to be shutting down all the nightclubs and the bars. And then they'd always cackle afterwards. It'd be like, oh, it's so good you're in Northbridge. You're going to be shutting down all the nightclubs and the bars. Like this, like, it's like, ugh. Like as if stopping people from going out after dark is my highest priority as someone filled with the love of God. You know, I didn't even think about that. You know, we planted a church to love people, to reach people. Never did the first thing that come to our minds when we planted in Northbridge was to shut down businesses. It's this rhetoric. It can turn into mean-spiritedness. The incorrect viewing leads to us just saying stupid things. Let's look at examples of this mean-spiritedness in the Word. Luke 9:52 to 56. Jesus sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, you do not know what manner of spirit you are of. The Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. John 18:10-11 says, Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Even Jesus' own disciples who hung around him. See, this is how strong we need to understand our fallen human nature is. Even Jesus' own disciples who hung around him, heard his words all the time, they had a tendency still to step into that place of calling down judgment or striking out at those who were in opposition. An inclination of standing aggressively against those who could be deemed as enemies of Christ or enemies of God's values or enemies of God's standard. You see, if we view ourselves correctly, we won't be able to lash out. James and John wanted to destroy a whole town. They were known as the Sons of Thunder. They were probably known for a violent disposition because of this name. They were tough guys. But just like we heard about the Pharisees, their own ways and traditions, just like the Pharisees, had now cut across the Spirit of God. Now, I could have been likened to these guys back in the day. You know, I egged the Mardi Gras and stuff like that. I was just saved. It just felt like the thing to do. Fallen nature was taking over. Let's egg the Mardi. You know what? We actually just that night ended up throwing eggs at lots of people. You know, pink shirt, throw eggs. Tight purple pants, throw eggs. See, they were zealous for the things of God. All these people were actually, here's the thing, zealous for the things of God. Passionate about their Jesus. Indeed, Peter was willing to take on Roman soldiers in defense of Jesus. You can't question their passion. You can't question their zeal, but they had missed the plan, a plan of redemption. As admirable as Peter's courage in this moment may seem to us, he was at that moment standing in the path of the will of God, of the redemptive plan. This is where we can find ourselves. We can end up doing the same. That James and John lashed out in zealous passion in defense of their master who was rejected. But he was like, no, you don't know what manner of spirit you are of. We can end up there. I can't stress it enough. When we look at the disciples' actions and even that they themselves could fall into this trap, does it surprise you that the church of today, 2,000 years later, millions of people strong, with thousands of denominations across hundreds of cultures on this earth, can get it wrong? Shouldn't surprise you in the slightest. We can get that wrong spirit. We can, in our passion and our zeal for God, lash out at what we see as enemies. We can display passionate mean-spiritedness. We can actually carry a mean-spirited Christianity. Matthew 7:16-20 says, and it's talking about ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. What this is talking about is, have you ever gone to another believer and you sort of maybe reached out, or maybe they even came to you, but it was like, man, that hurt. And look, I'm a Christian leader. I'm not against correction at all, but you know the difference between someone correcting you in love, and you know when you've gone to someone and what they had hurt. What they had was, oh, yeah, I don't think I'm going to reach my hand into there anymore. That's why it's saying, who would gather fruit from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Because when you reach there, man, there's something not right there. Something hurts there. There's something prickly there. This is what this verse is talking about, a mean-spirited Christianity. And it's not surprising because Matthew chapter 5 to 7, the Sermon on the Mount, maybe one of the most famous parts of the Bible. When you go, it's actually my favorite part of the Bible. When you go and read it, the whole thing is actually a reply to legalism. When you read it like that and you put every verse into the context of Jesus' reply in the book of Matthew, which is the gospel that was designed for a Jewish audience, in a society that worshipped the Pharisees as those who could keep the law, is it no surprise that the first part of the gospel, this massive tirade we find, is Jesus speaking out against legalism, speaking out against a mean-spirited Christianity. And you know what? How do we make sure that we keep this humble and contrite heart? It's all good right now, me talking about it, pointing the finger, but what's a method for keeping ourselves in that place? The Bible has given us a lot of tools to help us. First of all, I want to look at Matthew chapter 5. Here, what he's doing is Jesus is addressing those who actually think that gap has been narrowed. They actually think that the gap has started to come closer together. So he says, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. That's talking about Exodus chapter 20, verse 13. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. Anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. That's harsh. Why would Jesus say that? Surely that what he's saying is, look, if you think you've reached God's standard, the problem is you actually just don't understand what God's standard is. They're like, yeah, we've done that. We haven't murdered. He's saying, no. If you think you're right because you haven't murdered, let me tell you what God's true standard is. He's helping them now to view themselves in the right light. You see, they've narrowed the gap, so he makes the gap bigger once again. They see the gap as thou shalt not murder. Okay, cool. Let me extend the gap once again. Have you ever been angry with a brother? Have you ever called a brother a name? Well, then you are in danger of the fire of hell. Matthew 5, 27 to 28. And this is referencing Exodus 20, 14. You shall not commit adultery. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, what I want to do is I want all the guys to put their hand up if they actually know. Don't scrap that. So the guys are saying, yeah, well, we don't cheat on our wives. And he's like, no, let me show you God's true standard. You like that? I need one of those like Britney Spears at a concert microphone so I can do the hands properly. Matthew 5, 43 to 44. You have heard that was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's pretty easy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Who actually really does that? Who here sits there? Some of you might, so don't put your hand up because I look silly. But who actually sits here and prays for their enemies and finds ways from their resource, emotion, energy, and time to bless them? Probably not many of you. I don't. What he's saying is, once again, you think you know God's standard? Well, let me elevate that standard once again. The whole point of the Levitical law was meant to prove to us our guilt. Unfortunately, self-righteousness is part of our human nature. So, of course, some people found a way to actually think they had met the standard of the law. We need to understand we are so unrighteous. And no matter what we think we fixed up in our life, no matter how far our journey with God has gone, we need to understand that the levels never change. We are just as saved today as we were the first time we made that decision. Mark chapter 10 says, you know the commandments. And he's talking to a guy that actually came to him thinking that he was righteous. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony, you shall not defraud, honor your father or mother. Teacher, he declared, all these I have kept since I was a boy. Now for starters, who actually believes that he had kept the Torah since he was a boy? None of us. Good. But the guy was in deception, and Jesus wasn't going to argue the point with him. So he was like, okay, well, let me give you what you can't do then. Let me present to you what you can't do. You're in deception about all this. Let me give to you what you can't do. Once again, the levels changed. The guy went away. Now, here's the thing. Jesus wasn't, there's times when people, it says they came wanting to test him. And Jesus would always give him like a zing. He'd give him some snappy reply. And he'd be like, yeah. And in this case, it was different. Jesus actually looked at him and loved him. So why did he give him this clever answer? Because he's actually trying to create that need for a Savior. He wasn't trying to condemn him. He wasn't trying to outdo him and outfox him the way he did with so many teachers of the law that would come to him. But in this case, he looked at him. He had compassion. He's like, I need to create a need for a Savior in this man's life. I need to help him get the levels right. Pastor Paulos, who runs an awesome organization in Indonesia, I had the pleasure of dropping him at the airport just recently. And he told me this awesome word. He reckons God takes us through this journey. It's 3 stages. We start in I can. Then we end up in I can't, which leads us to He can. And I really love that. Now, has anyone had one of those annoying friends who talks about, this is probably more for young people, but they talk about their girlfriend too much? Like you're with them and they're just like, I fully love my girlfriend, hey. You're like, yeah, okay. And then like 10 minutes later, it's like, man, I just fully love my girlfriend, hey. You're like, that's got nothing to do with anything that's going on at this moment. But anyone know what I'm talking about? I just fully love my girlfriend, hey. Yeah, all right. What you've done is you've just encountered someone so enamored, so feeling special, someone who feels so privileged, they're feeling so in love to be with the one they are with, that any innocent bystander of an ear nearby encounters the mouth of the one who is smitten. You see, boasting is a natural part of being human. We speak highly about that which we think highly. That which is awesome to you, you will speak so highly of. It will be on your mind. You will speak highly about it all the time. The word says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak that which you've latched onto, that which you're meditating on, that which you're thinking about, that which you think is awesome. You will boast about it. You will speak about it all the time. So the challenge for us is what's coming out of our mouth. What do we boast in? Do we boast about the gift of salvation? Do we boast about His grace and His mercy? Do we get vulnerable with people and tell them where we're at and where He brought us to? Do we show them the deficiencies in our life in order to show them you too can receive salvation? Or are we starstruck about the wrong things? Do we boast in ourselves? Do we boast in that which we think is great about us? You see, if we learn to boast in our weakness, God gets the glory. But if we boast in ourselves, no one gets the glory because, 1, no one's really fooled, and 2, no one really cares. No one with half a brain is buying it. Like, okay, I'm just going to head over here now. This may come to a surprise to many of us. No one wants to know about how great we are. No one. It gets us nowhere because no one has a U-shaped hole in their heart. No one has a U-shaped need. Everyone has a God-shaped hole in their life. And they need to know about how good God is. 1 Corinthians 1:3 says, therefore, as it is written, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. 1 Corinthians 1:27 to 29 says, God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. This is basically God saying, you're not all that, so boast in me. Can I tell you, often if we create this incorrect, false sense of where we're meant to be as Christians, it stops the gospel going out. Because let me tell you what good news is. Good news is in your failing. You go to someone, you say, man, I feel like I've fallen so far. But man, how good is it? I've got a God that always picks me up. Man, I feel so unworthy of God right now. I've fallen once again, but man, God is so forgiving. He's so good. He just picks me up time and time again. He always forgives. He never condemns. He never judges. This is the sort of testimony that will reach someone. And if I could have the band come up and help me. In John chapter 21, verses 15 to 17, and this is how you know the Bible is real, because there's so much stuff about Peter in it, and he was the head of the church in Jerusalem, that when the copies may have come across the editor's table, he'd be like, nah, don't put that in. Talk about when Peter and Andrew, when they got caught, do it, He would have unedited it, but the Bible's so raw, it's so real. We see everything about Peter and all his failings and flaws. This book was written while he was still alive. How awesome is that? John 21, verses 15 to 17 says, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, there's a couple of things going on here. One, remember, Peter had said, Lord, even if all of these fall away in account of you, what's the first thing Jesus says to him? He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He doesn't confirm that. He just says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus says to him, feed my lambs. He's now ready. He's now ready to do the word of God. You see, Peter had to turn his rhetoric down in order for Jesus to efficiently use him. Also here, Jesus is using this highest form of love, agape, to consistently seek someone's highest good. That's a pretty hard thing to swear an oath to continually seek someone's highest good. So what does Peter do? We only see the words love, but there's two words for love, agape and phileo, a lesser, more affectionate form of love that would have been seen as a lower form of love. Jesus says to him, Peter, do you agape me? But he comes contrite and humble. Because of his failings, he now knows where he stands. And this God that he had failed comes back to him. He didn't seek him out. This God that he failed comes back to him, blesses him, gives them a catch of fish. Then even when they come to shore, it says this, they hadn't even dragged the fish in yet. He was already cooking them some fish on the stove. He provided everything. He did it all. He came back to them. And so he says, Peter, do you agape me? Peter, all he can do is say, God, you know that I phileo you. He was now ready. And from this, God tells him, you will now go. And what you said you will do, you will do. You will die for me. You will spread out your arms and you will die for me. He was now able to because he understood where he was. He understood where he stood in the light of God.